He had no regard, no concern for how that amendment would affect the security of you and your family. He was happy to replicate here in the United States the same conditions we have in Germany and Belgium and across Europe with uncontrolled migration from the Middle East.
Joining me now is Naveed Jamali, MSNBC contributor, Nayera Haque, former State Department spokesperson, and former Pentagon official Rosa Brooks. So, Rosa, I'm going to start with you on this. H.R. McMaster, the National Security Advisor, said the following of the speech that's coming. He said that it's going to be an inspiring yet direct speech on the need to confront radical ideology and the president's hope for a peaceful vision of Islam to dominate across the world. Hopeful about that?
Well, I'm watching with interest, as I'm sure is the rest of the world. The funny thing about Trump's speeches is that he just says whatever comes into his head, as far as I can tell, regardless of what is on the paper in front of him. So I think in terms of what could go wrong, number one, the speech is obviously reportedly written by Steve Miller, not famed for his calm and soothing forms of rhetoric. And number two, we've got Trump ad-libbing. So anything could happen. It's going to be an exciting day tomorrow.
Yeah, hopefully he won't do the hand gestures, then do the thumbs up, because I think he's been given a speech.
Right.
He's been given a list of things that you don't do. It's rude in Saudi Arabia to do them. So, Nayera, you've got the White House previewing this trip, the whole foreign trip. And this is via our own Peter Alexander. The White House has said this trip will present the chance to unify different religions around a common objective to bring everyone together in an effort to rise above more petty differences with the shared goal of peace and prosperity. The speech he's giving on Islam, he's doing in Saudi Arabia, where we know, of course, Wahhabism was born, which is the ideology that Osama bin Laden and others sort of took around the world with them. How do you expect a speech that theoretically could be quite tough on the Islamic faith will go down in the cradle of Islam, in the place that is in charge of Mecca and Medina?
So I guess we should be heartened that the president and Steve Miller and his people are recognizing that Islam, Judaism, and Christianity actually are all monotheistic faiths coming from the shared roots of Abraham. So that can be heartening, but the idea that going to Mecca and recognizing that as equivalent to the Vatican is false, because there is no Pope or Vatican equivalent for Muslims. Going to a foreign country before talking to your own Muslim community here in the U.S., people who are feeling attacked and are fearful for what their government is promoting these days, that's also disappointing, not being able to speak to American citizens, but going to a foreign government first. And then of all the Muslim countries to go to, the birthplace of Wahhabism, the most extreme literal interpretation of Islam that is easily seen as the underpinning of ISIS. This is Saudi 9/11 hijackers were majority from Saudi Arabia, and Saudi Arabia has never been held accountable for this. Multiple countries in the Muslim world feel threatened by this extreme interpretation of Islam that is now being spread because of Saudi's oil money into their country. So the ironies here are multiple, and unfortunately the royal family has realized that they have somebody who wants to appear royal himself in Trump, and so they're going to be capitalizing and playing on that rather than any substantive conversation about ending terrorism in the region.
Yeah, and Naveed, it's hard to believe that Donald Trump or his team, quite frankly, really understand sort of all of the players that intricately. Donald Trump notoriously only reads bullet points with his name on them. He doesn't read detailed policy papers. But if he did, might somebody who did understand it sort of make of a couple of dots? One, that Jared Kushner apparently just inked a deal personally to get a good deal for the Saudis on buying some military equipment, essentially, from Lockheed Martin. They just inked that deal. And the fact that you just had in Iran, which is the chief rival, you know, that these are two world sort of rivals in that region, just re-elected Mr. Rouhani, who is sort of the moderating influence in Iran, which is the Donald Trump team said is on notice at one point. What do you make of those dynamics?
I think Nayera is absolutely right. I mean, Donald Trump is clearly hitting way above his league here, and the reality is that, look, these foreign countries, they have intelligence services that read the news just like ours do, and they're wondering, is Donald Trump going to stay in power? Is he going to make it past 2020? And as such, they're going to formulate a course of action, a COA, that's going to essentially, I would think, is going to be neutral. They're going to look for some short-term appeasement. You know, we've heard the New York Times talk about how they have a plan to use small words and to appease and to sort of appeal to his ego by complimenting him on his victory in the election. I think that if they're smart, they're just going to kind of do something that's sort of middle of the road, let him get his little victory lap here, and wait to see what happens next. I don't think he's in a position to really trade. I mean, not to mention what just happened with Russia. I think they're probably, these countries are not big fans of Russia. I mean, Turkey aside. They're probably thinking, let's just, you know, make this a grip and grin, and let's not invest too much because we don't know how long this guy's going to be in power. And it's a legitimate concern.
But Rosa, there is the other sort of sense of it. And I talk to people, you know, somewhat frequently who say that, on the other hand, you know, some of these leaders in the more autocratic countries of the world, the Egypts of the world, the Saudi Arabias of the world, kind of understand Donald Trump, that he actually might be somebody they get along with because he's a lot more like them, quite frankly. His mindset is very transactional. You can essentially stay in his hotels or build him hotels and make him happy and do business. He won't lecture you on human rights, God forbid. He doesn't care about that. He's not going to sort of try to lord the country, American values over you. You look at the way he's treated Duterte, the way he's treated Erdogan. So in a sense, might he actually have his best possible reception in some of these more autocratic countries in the Middle East?
Absolutely. He's like them, except he's dumber.
Rosa first, and then Naveed.
Sorry, yeah, he's like them, except he's sort of dumber, and I think the Saudis have absolutely got his number. I saw that the Saudis have given him a gold medal just for showing up. I think they figured Donald Trump out. They give him a little gold star. They treat him like royalty. They nod and look respectful, and he's eating out of their hands, and that's not really very good for the rest of the world, but it's great for the Saudis. He obviously has no discomfort whatsoever with authoritarianism.
Yeah,
and let's be clear also, a win for Donald Trump in this situation of getting along with autocratic leaders is not necessarily a win for the United States. The idea that they said they're not going to be moralizing to these countries, moralizing about values such as freedom of the press, human rights, and freedom for women, those are the values the United States should be espousing. It should not be the values of how can we get the best business deal for a particular family.
Yeah, and you've already seen people on the right giving kudos to Melania and Ivanka for not covering their hair in Saudi Arabia, which lots and lots and lots of American first ladies and others have done. I mean, they're giving him already medals just for showing up, even some of his supporters back here.
Yeah, and both the other panels are absolutely right. I mean, I think this is going to be short-term gain. And you're right, Joy. This is somewhere where someone who, other autocratic dictators, if you will, can look at them and say, hey, I get it. I relate to this guy. That's just going to translate to short-term thing. I don't think that any country is going to look at this objectively and say, there's a long-term policy we can strike with the United States that's going to have any meaningful, long-term, lasting impact. So they're just trying to appeal to his ego. And I think that's probably a smart move because, honestly, he's like a kid with shiny keys. You can distract him pretty easily.
And as long as his tie is longer than the medal, then he feels like it all coordinates with his outfit. You know, Rosa, last word to you on this, because on the serious side, NATO also has to hear from Donald Trump, and they cannot be excited that he's going to talk to them, bringing along his speechwriter who said that NATO is an organization made many decades ago that is incongruent with our current foreign policy challenges. That's Stephen Miller about last year on Fox News.
No, that's right. I think obviously he is expected to do some reassuring. Whether he can stick to the script that I am certain H.R. McMaster, the National Security Advisor, is trying to get him to stick to and actually be reassuring is anybody's guess. But I do think that we have already reached the point where most foreign leaders, whether they're authoritarian or democratic, have kind of got him figured out, and they realize that he's going to say crazy stuff, and it may or may not matter, and that's both good news and bad news. The good news is that he may not stick to this crazy stuff. The bad news is that he also may not stick to the reassuring stuff.
Yeah, well, here we go. And they can always just